It's my pleasure to be here today to be able to announce the solving of a cold homicide investigation from 1991. And through the work done on this investigation and the collaborative efforts between us and Westminster, Colorado, we were also able to resolve and solve a case from the same suspect in 1975 in Colorado. I'll start first by going over the details of our investigation here and what led us to this point where we're able to make this announcement. In 1991, May, Vegas Metro Police responded to a report of a suspicious death at the 1000 block of Monroe inside an apartment. There they made contact with two females, a friend and a relative of Sherry Bridgewater, who had just found her deceased inside her apartment. Due to the suspicious nature of how her body was positioned at the time, homicide responded, took over the investigation, and through autopsy, it was very quickly learned that Miss Bridgewater was sexually assaulted and murdered by strangulation with a ligature. The homicide investigative team worked that case relentlessly over the years and continually reviewed it over the years, but unfortunately at that time it had remained unsolved. As many of you are well aware, the advancements in DNA technology has allowed us to go back and look at cases and obtain evidence that we had, but we didn't know what was there until the advancements in DNA technology. And it wasn't there until 2013 when the sexual assault kit from Miss Bridgewater was submitted for DNA examination. And through that DNA examination, we were able to develop a suspect profile of the person who we believed murdered Sherry Bridgewater, but at that time we were not able to put a name behind the DNA profile. When we put that in 2013, we received a hit in CODIS, which is the DNA database, which linked us to a second unsolved murder in Westminster, Colorado from December of 1975. Immediately, our detectives in 2013 began to collaborate with Westminster PD, where we learned that in their homicide, a female by the name of Therese Becker was found deceased in a field, and during autopsy, it was determined that she also was sexually assaulted and died by strangulation. Both agencies had the same suspect profile, but at that time, there was not the technology available to us to actually identify who the suspect profile was, unless somehow we were able to obtain DNA from that suspect. It wasn't until about 2018 that both agencies, working together collaboratively, decided to submit this case for forensic genealogy. The forensic genealogy eventually sent the DNA sample from the suspect to Parabon Nanolabs and eventually to a company called Solves by DNA in Denver, Colorado, and through close collaboration with the LVMPD, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Westminster PD, in 2022, almost 4 years later, we were eventually able to identify our suspect as Thomas Martin Elliott, who you'll see here to my left. Through our investigation and their investigation, we were able to place Mr. Elliott in Colorado at the time of the murder of Therese Becker in Westminster, Colorado, and we are also able to place him in Las Vegas in 1991 at the time of the murder of Sherry Bridgewater. Later on in the year of 1991 in November, Thomas Martin, he was pronounced deceased of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, i.e. a suicide, here in Las Vegas, and he was buried at a local cemetery. When I say that we were able to identify the suspect, we were not able to 100% confirm he was the suspect until we obtained DNA from Mr. Elliott. Both agencies, again, collaborated. Exhumations are very expensive to do. And based on the details, we approached our partners, as many of you are aware, we work all the time with, which is the Vegas Justice League. And we approached them with this case, and we asked them if they would assist us in the funding of the exhumation of Thomas Elliott so that we can obtain a DNA sample from him. In October of 2023, Mr. Elliott's remains were exhumed, and we were able to obtain tissue and bone samples from him, which were then submitted to another lab known as Bodhi Technology, where they were able to extract the DNA sample and was compared to both cases and confirmed a 100% match that Thomas Martin Elliott is the suspect in both cases, and we can effectively say that both cases are now closed. Unfortunately, it took a long time to get to this point, but these are some of those cases that would not be solved with any other technology at the time that were available to detectives. I've been up here before numerous times talking to you about cold cases, and these presentations that we do resolving a cold cases are very important to me, because not only we were able to solve a cold case, we were on the backside able to provide two different families, in this case, closure. And that closure resolution came through close collaboration between not only two law enforcement entities and numerous different labs, but also close coordination with our community partners. And that coordination, in my opinion, allows us to continue to move forward, and through the direction of our sheriff and our cold case team can continue to look at additional cold cases to see what cases DNA can solve, and continue to move those cases forward and provide those families hope on those investigations, which I received a phone call today from a family on unsolved homicide, and that hope is very necessary for them. With that said, I'll take any additional questions some of you may have on this particular investigation.
What was Mr. Elliott's connection to Las Vegas, and did he have any connection to the victim here?
So we still haven't been able to establish positively a connection here. However, we do know that Mr. Elliott possibly met his victim at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. We're not able to 100% confirm that, but we know that both parties did go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that both parties, we believe there's a possibility that they met there. His connection to here, Mr. Elliott was arrested and booked into prison in Colorado for a burglary charge shortly after, around the time of Tree Becker's murder. He was then transported to Carson City, or the Nevada Department of Corrections, where he served the rest of his term from the Colorado case. When he was released in 1981, shortly after, unfortunately, he committed a sexual assault on a 13-year-old girl and remained in prison until 1991, when he was paroled. Shortly after he was paroled is when he murdered Sherry Bridgewater.
That assault, the second assault here, happened in Las Vegas or Nevada?
The one of the 13-year-old occurred in Carson City in 1981. And so he was incarcerated from 81 to 91. And so we can account for most of the time period of where he was at. And we're still going back over the time he was not deceased, obviously, and not out of prison, and going over to see if there's any additional cases that we have that might be connected to him, where there might not be DNA evidence we're aware of, to see. But at this time, we don't have any additional cases related to Thomas Martin Elliott that we are aware of.
Have the families of Bridgewater been contacted at all? Or?
That's a great question, and I thank you for asking. So, unfortunately, her mother and father passed away, which, if you go back over the case file, you can see that her dad was very interested in making sure that his daughter's case was solved, and I wish that I could say that we had a chance to solve it while he was alive and tell him that. My investigator that worked this case did have an opportunity to communicate with both of her sons. She was 30 years old at the time of her murder, and both of her sons are still alive, and we were able to communicate with them and advise them of such. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your time.